All right, let's talk about something that's absolutely key to building software that can handle real-world complexity: domain-driven design, or as you'll hear it called, DDD. If you've ever looked at a massive, complicated application and just thought, how on earth do they keep all this from turning into a giant ball of mud? Well, DDD is a huge part of the answer. Let's dive in.
So, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at the why, the kind of complexity that DD is designed to tame. Then, we'll get into its secret weapon, the ubiquitous language. After that, we'll get our hands dirty with the core building blocks, and we'll really focus on the crucial difference between entities and value objects. We'll wrap it all up with a real-world example, and then talk about what this means for you.
Okay, so let's start with the big problem we're trying to solve. Why do we even need an approach like domain-driven design? It all comes down to complexity. But here's the twist. We're not talking about technical complexity. We're talking about the complexity of the business itself. And this right here is the million-dollar question. Imagine you're trying to build software for international shipping or for a hospital's patient management system. The rules are just incredibly intricate. They've got exceptions to the exceptions, and they change all the time. When developers are just handed a document with a list of features, it's a recipe for disaster. Misunderstandings creep in, bugs pop up everywhere, and pretty soon, the whole system is too rigid and fragile to update.
So, to get a handle on this, we have to understand this one simple word: domain. It might sound a little academic, but it's not. The domain is just the world your software operates in. Building an e-commerce site, your domain is retail. A banking app, your domain is finance. It's the processes, the jargon, the logic, it's the business.
And this is where domain-driven design comes into the picture. Now, it's so important to get this. DD is not a new technology. It's not a framework you download or a library you install. It's a way of thinking. It's a philosophy that puts the business domain at the absolute center of the project, making the software a direct reflection of that business reality.
So how does this actually work? Well, it all hinges on one core idea, and honestly, it's the secret sauce of the whole thing. It's a concept called the ubiquitous language, and it's like a Rosetta Stone for your entire team.
The idea is so simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It means that everyone, and I mean everyone, from the business expert to the junior developer to the project manager, uses the exact same terms for the exact same concepts. If the business calls a client a customer, then the code has a customer class. Not a user object, not an account, customer. There's no translation layer. The conversation in a meeting should sound just like the code.
And here is where that concept gets its teeth. The language is the model. They are one and the same. So when the team is in a meeting and they decide, you know what, we're not going to call it a booking anymore. We're calling it a reservation. That's not just a casual change. That change has to ripple through everything: the design documents, the diagrams, and yes, the actual code itself. This is how the software stays alive and in sync with the business it serves.
Okay, so we've got our shared language. Awesome. But how do we use that language to actually construct a model of our domain? Well, that brings us to the core building blocks of DDD. Think of these as the tools in our toolkit.
These are some of the main pieces we work with. You can think of them like specialized Lego bricks that help us build a model of the business. For now, we're going to zero in on two of the most foundational and important ones: entities and value objects. Getting these right is half the battle.
To get our heads around that first building block, we have to start with this key idea from the pioneer of DDD, Eric Evans. What he's saying here is that for a lot of things we model, it's not the descriptive details that matter most. It's this idea of a consistent identity that lasts over time. And that is the absolute key to understanding what an entity is.
So an entity is something we care about because of who or what it is, not just the data attached to it. Think about yourself. Your address can change, your job can change, your phone number can change, but you are still you. You have a continuous identity. In the software world, a specific customer account or a single bank transfer are entities. We have to track them uniquely, because if we mix up their identities, that's catastrophic. We're talking about serious data corruption. Okay, this brings us to what might be the single most important and most frequently confused distinction in all of domain-driven design. What makes something an entity versus its partner in crime, the value object? Let's clear this up once and for all. Let's break this down side by side.
On the left, we have the entity. With your user account, you care intensely about which one it is. It has a unique ID, and that's everything. Now look at the right, the value object. Here you only care about what it is. Think about a $5 bill. Do you care about which specific $5 bill you have with its unique serial number? No way. You just care that its value is $5. Same with a date or an address. And here's the kicker. Value objects are immutable. You don't change an address. You just create a whole new one and replace the old one. This simple rule makes your system way more predictable and kills a whole class of nasty bugs.
So, we have entities for things with a unique identity, and we have value objects for their descriptive attributes. But how do we get them to actually do things? Let's see how all these pieces come together to form a working model.
This is where our third building block comes into play, the service. So, think about transferring money from one bank account to another. Where does that logic belong? It doesn't really feel right to put it on the from account or the to account. It's an action that coordinates between them. That's the perfect job for a service. It's a place to put those important business operations that don't neatly belong to a single object.
To pull all of this together, let's use an example we can all wrap our heads around. A simple point-of-sale system. You know, the software a cashier uses at the checkout counter. We've all seen this a million times, so it's a perfect way to make these ideas concrete.
Okay, so just picture this process. A customer walks up, the cashier starts a new sale, they scan items one by one, and the system keeps a running total. Now, listen to the words we're using just by describing this. Customer, sale, item, total. These aren't random words. They are popping right out of the real-world process. These are the seeds of our ubiquitous language. And see that last step, system calculates tax? That's a classic example of a domain service at work, coordinating everything to produce a final result.
And this is how we translate that real-world story directly into our software model. The sale becomes a core entity in our code. Each scanned item becomes a sales line item. Cashier and customer are defined as roles. You can see how we're literally building a vocabulary in our code that directly mirrors the vocabulary of the business.
So, let's zoom out. What's the big picture takeaway here? What does all this careful modeling and disciplined language actually get you at the end of the day?
Ultimately, it comes down to this. The domain model isn't just a technical diagram for developers to stare at. It's a communication tool. It's the common ground, the shared understanding where business experts and developers can meet. It ensures that the software being built is a true, living reflection of the business it's meant to serve.
And this idea leads to a really fundamental shift in mindset. In a DDD world, developers are not just order takers who mindlessly translate requirements into code. They become co-owners and guardians of the model. They are empowered, even expected, to push back and ask questions to protect the integrity of that model and keep it pure.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. Think of domain-driven design as a mirror that you hold up to your business. The question you have to ask is, when you look at your software's code, what do you see reflected back? Is it a clear, accurate image of your business reality? Or is it a warped, distorted, funhouse mirror reflection? The answer to that question tells you everything. Thanks for watching.